criteria. Just for example, if you have data for some people who's and described by their features like height, weight, age, etc. And you are trying to group the peoples so that the people will having similar height and weight and age go to one group, so one cluster. So there might be several clusters in the data set. So that is the problem of clustering. And the problem that we are going to discuss is called the association rule mining. Here our goal is to extract the knowledge of association among the columns or among the attributes of our data sets. So which columns or which attributes are associated and which are not, so that's why it is also called as association analysis or association rule learning, because we are trying to extract some rules that will tell us that which columns are, how the different columns are associated with each other. We'll give examples, don't worry. So it was introduced first in '93 by Dr. Agarwal. So it is a relatively new techniques than the classical techniques of classification, clustering, or regression. So association rule mining, a relatively newer concept, is around 30 years back. Agarwal actually introduced this concept, and it was initially used for market basket analysis. Now what it means that suppose when you have gone to a supermarket, you enter, suppose you have gone to Spencer or Big Bazaar kind of thing, and you just enter the market, take a basket, and then go around the market, pick up the items and put in the basket, and then finally come out to the counter, pay and go away. So whatever items you are putting in the basket, so that is what we call a transaction. So a transaction means what items have been purchased in a particular, by a particular customer in a particular transaction. So here is an example of such a data set. Here each row is corresponding to one of the transactions, and these are the items that have been purchased by each transaction. So transaction 1 has purchased bread and milk, transaction 2 has purchased bread, diapers, beer and eggs, transaction 3 purchases milk, diapers, beer and cola, and so on. So different transactions purchase the different items, and a market owner can maintain a data set like this. It can be data of only 1 day or even 1 hour, or it can be large enough for capturing the data of 1 year, complete year. So it can be a huge data set, right? If you are considering all the transactions happening in a particular duration of time. So when you have a data set like this, apparently how this data set can be utilized. So that is the modern approach, that how we have the data resource. Now the question is how we can utilize this data. So that the basic idea of data-driven knowledge extraction or data-driven AI. So you have data set, you want to extract some knowledge out of it, which is not apparently viewable just looking in naked eye. If you just look into the data set, you cannot find anything very relevant. But when you apply some mining techniques like association rule mining, you can extract some interesting associations among the different items. Like which items are being purchased together frequently. So for example, you can have a rule like this, that beers implies cola. So this rule, it is a rule between two items. It says that it is interpreted like that if someone has purchased beer, he or she is likely to purchase cola also. So this side is called the antecedent and this side is called the consequent of the rule. So if someone purchases beer, he or she is also likely to purchase cola. So if these kind of rules can be extracted, just looking into this data set, you may not get, so this is a small data set, you can have a huge data set in a given form of a table. You cannot actually just see this, what is happening in the data. But when you apply association rule mining techniques, they are capable of extracting this kind of rules. Now, question is that how these rules will be helpful? Any idea what these rules will, whether this rule will help in any way? If you can find out such rules, any one example application of this rule, how this will be helpful? Recommendations. So one application will be definitely recommendation. So when you are purchasing something, so suppose someone has purchased beer, so you can recommend cola to him. Or you can just announce some kind of discounts on cola if you are purchasing beer. Any other? So for online market, it is kind of recommendation is highly, this kind of rules will be highly useful for that. You can also decide on some, as I said, that some promotional offer for these items together. And for offline market also, these rules can be very useful. For example, in a supermarket, if you have this rule, that means you know that these items are being purchased together frequently. So what you will do, that you will keep these items nearby, so that it will help the customers who will be entering the market and look for these items, so they can get it nearby. This is one possibility. Another possibility is that some tricky decision also can be taken just to increase the sales or to advertise something. For example, in a supermarket there are generally rows of shelves. So what the market owner may decide that he or she will put the beer in one side of the row and the cola in the other side of the row. So that after picking up beer or cola, when the person will look for the other item, so he has to traverse through all the items in between, and he might be provoked to buy something from that. So these kind of rules, so this is just for market basket analysis, but it is not restricted to market basket analysis also. There are many other applications where you can actually apply association rule mining. One such application I will discuss later on. So the question is that how we can extract these rules. So as I said, that there are many applications in IoT data analysis, the bioinformatics, the medical diagnosis, web mining, scientific data analysis. So any kind of data which can be posed as a transaction data set like this, you can apply association rule mining from there. So the question is that how we can extract these association rule mining, how we can extract these association rules. So formally, let us define the association rule mining problem. So we have a set of items, all possible items, capital I. So like beer, cola, diaper, milk, biscuit, whatever which are being sold in the market. So that is the set of items. Suppose we have n number of items. And also here the data set is basically a set of transactions. So transaction 1 contains item set x1. So x1 is an item set. Transaction 2 also contains another item set x2 and so on. There are m number of such transactions where each of these xj is a subset of I, because each transaction purchases a subset of items, all possible items, subset of all possible items. Now, I will call an item set as a k item set if the number of items in that item set is k. Okay, so it will be called as k item set. So these are just some terminologies just to help you understand the basic things later on. So for example, if you have an item set milk, bread, cereal, it will be called as a 3 item set because it has 3 items. Each transaction Ti contains a subset of items chosen from capital I. I is a set of all items. And a transaction width is defined as the number of items present in the item. So a k item set has a width of k, like that. Now, we define the support of an item set. So support of an item set is defined in this way. This is the number of transactions containing all the items in the item set. So that means given an item set X, support of X is defined as set of or the number of transactions Ti such that X is contained in Ti. That means Ti has purchased X. Out of all the items which has been purchased Ti, X is also part of that. So basically it counts the frequency of an item set in the whole data set, in how many transactions these items have been purchased. So this is the support of an item set. So for example, in the previous data set, if we count that what is the support of beer, diapers, milk, so we have to find out that in how many transactions all these three items have been purchased. So you see that beer, diapers and milk. So beer, diapers, I think this example actually does not correspond to that. Beer, diapers, milk, beer, diapers, milk. So actually it is, support is 2, right? For this case, support is 2. I think that, yeah, the support is 2. Okay. So you see that in this data set, we have purchased this data set. In this data set, the 2 transactions have purchased all these 3 items together. There may be some other items in those transactions, but this is also part. These 3 items are also part. So support of this item set, beer, diaper, milk, is 2. So similarly, we can, given any item set, we can count the number of transactions, in how many transactions this item set has been purchased. Okay, that will be called the support of the item set. And I will call an item set is frequent item set if given a threshold value of the support, we call that minimum support, which is generally a user input to the problem. So all the item sets which have support greater than equal to that threshold minimum support will be called as frequent item set, right? And our job is actually try to find out, given a minimum support value, we have to find out all the frequent item sets from the data set. All the frequent item sets from the data set. So that's the first step that we have to do for association rule mining. Now, what is an association rule? Association rule will be an implication like this: X implies Y, where X is the antecedent, Y is the consequent. So, for example, like if someone purchases bread, he is also likely to purchase milk. So, the association rule will like bread implies milk. So, bread implies milk will be an association rule. And it can consist of more than one items also. For example, bread, milk implies butter. So that also can be so bread and milk implies butter. So that is also an association rule. So X and Y, so these X and Y both can be item sets, not a single item only. Now we define confidence of a rule, X implies Y, is this way. So confidence of a rule X implies Y is defined as the support of the rule. Support of the rule means we have defined support of an item set. Okay. Now how we define the support of a rule? Support of a rule is defined as support of the antecedent union consequent, this item set. So support of a rule, suppose bread implies milk, this is a rule. So support of a rule is, support of this rule is support of bread milk, these item set. Support of bread milk, okay? So similarly, support of suppose bread milk implies butter, this rule is actually equal to the support of bread milk butter, right? So confidence of a rule is defined as support of the rule divided by support of the antecedent only. So in simple term, it is like that, in how many transactions you are purchasing X, out of that in how many transactions you are also purchasing Y. So for example, bread implies milk, this is a rule. So first you count in how many transactions bread appears, and in only those transactions whether milk also appears. So you count in how many transactions bread and milk both appears, divided by in how many only bread appears. Not only, but it may include or may not include milk, but bread appears. That will be, so support of X is always greater than equal to support of X implies Y. Agree? So support of bread will be always greater than equal to support of bread milk. So this ratio is called the confidence of the rule. So when we are extracting rules from the data set, from the transaction data sets, obviously which kind of rules we will try to extract? Which rules will be considered to be important rules? The rules will having high support and high confidence. So if you are going to take some decision based on these rules, you cannot take a decision based on a rule which is not very frequent in the data set or not high confident rule. But if a rule has very high support and also very highly confident, then that rule is really frequent in the data set. That rule is definitely supported by the data set. So based on that rule, you can take some valuable decisions. You cannot just extract a random rule and take decision based on that unless that rule is having high support and confidence. Okay? So this support and confidence are two metrics by which we judge the goodness of a rule. How good or how important is the rule? How non-trivial is the rule? Right? So our goal is basically here, for example, if I want to find the confidence of this rule, milk diaper implies beer. So milk diaper implies beer, we have already computed that support of the rule. So this is the support of the rule, because support of the rule means when we consider all three items together, support of that item set is 2. And divided by support of X means support of milk and diaper. So what is support on milk and diaper in this data set? So it is 1, twice, thrice. Okay? So support of this antecedent is 3. So the confidence of the rule is 2 by 3. So that is 67%, 66.66%. Okay? So this is the confidence of the rule. Just like we have used a mean support as a support threshold, we can also use a mean confidence as the confidence threshold. So we are looking for, so the basic idea is that the formal definition of the problem, association rule mining problem, is that given a set of transactions T, find all the rules having support greater than equal to mean support and confidence greater than equal to mean confidence. So we take 3 inputs. One is the transaction data set. Second is the minimum support threshold from the user, and third is the minimum confidence threshold. And our job is to find out all the rules, association rules, which satisfy this minimum support constraint and minimum confidence constraint. That means all the rules having support greater than equal to minimum support and confidence greater than equal to minimum confidence. So that's the main idea, and so those rules will be considered as the most important set of rules according to your supplied support and minimum confidence values. So this is the problem definition. Now, how to solve this problem? That's the question. One way to solve the problem is just to use a brute force technique. Now, what is a brute force technique? This is an exhaustive search. So suppose you have n number of items in the data set. So how many possible item sets will be there? So generally it is, we divide the whole process into two steps. So first, we extract all the frequent item sets. That means all the item sets having support greater than equal to minimum support. Then from the frequent item sets only, we extract the rules. So the rules will automatically satisfy the minimum support criteria. And then from the extracted rules, we filter out the rules which having confidence less than the minimum confidence. Now the first step, that is the extracting the all frequent item sets. That means extracting all the item sets having support greater than equal to minimum support. So the brute force technique is like this, that suppose you have n number of items in the data set. So what will be your possible number of, so the idea is that you generate each item set one by one, all item sets, you compute the support of the item sets, and then choose only those which satisfy the minimum support threshold. Okay, you choose only those item sets which have support greater than equal to minimum support. So this is the idea, very simple algorithm, that you generate all the item sets one by one. First all the one item sets, that means item set containing only one item, then all the two item sets, then all the three item sets, and so on. Finally all the n item, there will be only one n item set, and then compute the support one by one, and then finally discard all the item sets which don't satisfy the minimum support criteria. Now can you tell me that how many such item sets are possible? If there are n number of items, how many item sets are possible? Suppose I say that there are 3 items only. How many sets will be there? So first of all one item sets. So there will be 3 one item sets. How many 2 item sets will be there? Again 3 2 item sets. Suppose there are A, B, C, these are the 3 items. So A, B, B, C and A, C. So these are the 2 item sets, 3 2 item sets. And how many 3 item sets? There will be 1 3 item sets. So 3 plus 3 plus 1, so total 7 number of item sets. So you can easily compute the support value of these 7 item sets, and according to the minimum support you choose the which are the frequent ones. So how many item sets will be there if n equal to 4? N equal to 4? 2 to the power 4 minus 1, right? 2 to the power 4, sorry, 2 to the power 4, yeah, 2 to the power 4 minus 1. No, I'm just saying probably wrong. Yeah, yeah, it is like that. So it is actually like power set, right? 2 to the power 4 minus 1, fine. So we are just discarding the null set, okay? So 2 to the power 4 minus 1 will be the number of sets in the power set. So general formula is, if there are n number of items, so you will have 2 to the power n minus 1 number of possible item sets. So what will happen if n is large? Suppose n is 100. It is even very small with respect to a supermarket. There are thousands of items. So n is 1000. You need to generate 2 to the power 1000 number of subsets and then computing the support. Is it possible? Even with the fastest supercomputer of nowadays, it is not possible. Even it is possible, it will take years. For even 100 items, it might take 30 years to complete. So brute force method is not a solution. A simple algorithm, but it is not a solution as long as the that number of items is going to be large. You cannot use this exhaustive search. So you need a more efficient approach. So because this brute force method does a lot of unwanted computations, because you are going to compute the support of many item sets which will be finally discarded. And you see that these data sets are normally very sparse data sets. Sparse data sets, why I am saying the sparse? I mean the less dense, very small density. Because if you have suppose 1000 items in your market, and in a transactions, how many items are purchased? 5, 10, 15, 20 maximum. So out of 1000 in a transaction, only 20 items are purchased, maximum. Another transaction, only 5 items are purchased. Another transaction, only 1 item is purchased. So it means that the whole data set is very sparse. So if you have a minimum support threshold, just after some time, if you start from 1 item set, 2 item set, 3 item sets and so on, after few iterations, all of them are going to be infrequent. Larger the item set will be, there will be more probability that the item set will be infrequent. Okay? So for brute force method, you are still computing their support values unnecessarily, right? The question is that whether we can stop at certain point, that before computing or going to be computing the support for too many large items. So the first step, as I already mentioned, to decouple the support and confidence requirement. That means here the two-step process. First step will be the frequent item set generation, and the second stage is the rule generation. So first we'll extract the frequent item sets, and then the rules will be generated only from those frequent item sets, right? So this is an example of a brute force technique. So what is this actually? We first start with all the single item sets. Then we combine the single item sets to get the 2 item sets, compute the support values, then combine the 2 item sets to get the 3 item sets, then combine the 3 item sets to get the 4 item sets, and finally the 5 item set. So this is called item set lattice. So this lattice structure is called an item set lattice, right? So in the brute force method, the whole lattice is actually generated. The complete lattice is generated, and that is too many. So we have here 5C1 number of single item set, then 5C2 number of 2 item set, then 5C3 number of 3 item sets, and so on, right? So a lattice structure is like this. First it increases, then it comes down, because 5C4 is same as 5C1, right? Now to speed up the brute force algorithm, we want to reduce the number of candidate item sets for which the support has to be computed. The question is that can we discard some item sets even without computing their support? Even without computing a support of some item set, can we tell that these item set will be infrequent? That is the question. And this Agarwal, in his 1993 paper, he has given a very unique idea or very unique observation on this lattice structure. So actually there are many algorithms for this association rule mining. The first and pioneering algorithm was called the a priori algorithm. This was published in that Agarwal's paper in 93. So here, although the search space is exponential search space, 2 to the power d number of items, So it can reduce by pruning to the search space. This search space is reduced to a much smaller manageable length, manageable size. And so this is to reduce the number of candidate item sets. That means this a priori algorithm is able to discard many item sets even without computing their support. Whereas this FP growth algorithm, FP growth tree algorithm, actually can reduce the number of comparisons. Anyway, I'm not going into the details of FP growth tree algorithm. It is much more efficient algorithm than a priori algorithm, but let us concentrate on the a priori algorithm, that how we can reduce the number of candidate item sets for which the support has to be computed. So for that, Agarwal has proposed a very good observation. It says that, you see that whether you agree with that, if an item set is frequent, if we have already found an item set is frequent, can we say that all its subset will be also frequent? If bread, butter, milk is frequent, can we say that bread, butter is also frequent? If bread, milk, butter has support, suppose 5, can bread, milk, butter, can bread, milk has support greater than or less than 5? Can it have less than 5? It can be 5 or more, right? Agree? And the most important observation, just the opposite, that if an item set is already found to be infrequent, all its supersets will be infrequent. So this is called the a priori property. This is the anti-monotone property. That if an item set, if suppose we have found that bread, butter is infrequent, is there any need to compute the support of bread, butter, milk? This will be automatically infrequent. So this is the main idea of the a priori algorithm. You start forming the lattice. As soon as you find something infrequent, there is no need to generate any item sets which is superset of this infrequent item set. So you see that you find AC as infrequent. The complete lattice structure, the part of the lattice which is headed by this AC, will be discarded. So lot of item sets will be discarded without computing their support at all. So this is the basic idea of a priori algorithm. So you start like brute force algorithm. You start with all single item sets, compute their supports, and keep only those which are frequent. Then combine these to get 2 item sets, compute their support, and discard all the infrequent ones, so that their supersets are also not generated. And this way we proceed. We will stop actually much before than coming here, Lot of item sets, most of the item sets will be discarded, provided the data set is sparse, which is normally. The data set is sparse. Okay? So this is the basic idea of a priori property and the a priori algorithm as a whole. So just like this example, you see that if we found that AB is infrequent, then the whole lattice structure which is headed by AB will be discarded. A lot of item sets will be discarded. You don't have to compute their support. You don't have to actually generate them at all. So here, so this is, if we compare the brute force method and the a priori method, you see that if every subset for brute force method you have to, so if you have 6 items, you are, and support, I mean that support value is, suppose it is written anywhere, so yeah, support value is 2, or support value is 3, suppose, minimum support is 3. So what will happen in brute force technique? So you first generate all the 6 items, then, so suppose this coke and X, this will be discarded. So then we just another 6C2 and then 6C3. So if you want to stop with the 3 items maximum, then you have to actually generate and compute the support of 41 item sets. Whereas if you want to use the a priori algorithm, so in the first case you have to consider the 6 items, fine. In the second case, by combining you again compute that another 6 items and finally 1 item, and only 13 items, for only 13 item sets you compute the support. So from 41 it reduces to 13. So for a bigger problem, only very small fraction of item sets, actually for them actually you have to compute the support values. Most of them will be discarded. So this candidate generation and pruning, so in a priori algorithm, for candidate generation, basically what we are doing, we have suppose already computed the frequent item set of size k minus 1. So from k minus 1 item sets, we generate possible k item sets. So suppose we have already found that all frequent 2 item sets. So from frequent 2 item sets, we generate possible 3 item sets, for which we have to check whether they are frequent or not, right? So this is the candidate generation, and there is a technique called candidate pruning, by which we can discard some of the candidates without computing their support. So these are the 2 steps by which that a priori algorithm actually works. So here is an example. So this is an example of a brute force technique. You generate all possible candidates, and so suppose we want to find that all frequent 3 item sets. So in brute force technique, if you have 6 items, you generate 6C3 number of 3 item sets, compute the support of all of them, and finally find that only 1 item set is frequent. So all the rest of the computations are unnecessary, right? But in case of a priori algorithm, we can proceed in this way. So this is called fk minus 1 cross f1 method to generate fk item sets. So we have all frequent 1 item sets, suppose, and we have already generated all frequent 2 item sets. We combine them. How we combine? Suppose we have beer and diapers, with them we combine bread, that will be 1, and so on. So these are the 4 possible item sets, and from which, so only for these 4 we have to compute the support to find out that this is the frequent one. Previously we had to compute the frequency of all of them to finally choose this one, but in this case we have to compute the frequency only for these 4 and then compute, this is the frequent one. So the computation is much less than the brute force technique, and it will be much lesser if we use that fk minus 1 cross fk minus 1 technique. That means we generate only the 3 item sets from the 2 item sets only. So here basically what we do, that if we have suppose 2 k minus 1 item sets like this, one is a1 to ak minus 1 and one is b1 to bk minus 1, this can be joined together if, except the last item, all the items before that they are same and the last items differ. So for example, if we say that beer diapers and or say, yeah, so suppose in the other way, that suppose So braid diaper and beard diaper. So these are the two item sets, two item sets. So we can combine them as braid beard diapers. So this way, no other combinations are actually necessary. This can be proved. So these will further reduce the computations. Only 3 item sets will be generated, and for these we have to compute the support and find which is whether that is frequent or not. But the basic idea is that maybe it might be difficult to understand quickly here, but the basic idea is that it is definitely reducing lot of computations. So in brute force method, you have this many computations, and finally in this method you have only one computation, right? So this is the advantage of a priori algorithm and the a priori property that was proposed in that 93 paper. So that's why this paper is still very, very popular one. And if you want to do any association rule mining work, you have to refer to that paper, you have to cite that paper, right? Although lot of more sophisticated algorithms have come out for association rule mining, but we cannot escape from the a priori algorithm. So it is still relevant. Now, once you have suppose extracted all the frequent item sets, now it is the time to extract the rules, because our final goal is to extract the rules. So what we do, now if suppose ABCD is a frequent item set, now what are the rules that can be extracted from this frequent item set? The rules are, the approach is like this, that suppose if X is an, so if suppose Y is the item sets from which we are extracting the rule, this can be done as we find a subset of Y, X. This has to be repeated for all proper subsets of Y, and we put X in one side and we put the remaining part, that is Y minus X, in the other side. Just for example, suppose ABCD, what is, so ABC is a subset, so we put ABC in left hand side and the remaining, that is D, in the other side. So this is one rule. Similarly, we have ABD implies C, another rule. We have ACD implies B, another rule. We have BCD implies A, another rule. So this is for subset of size 3. Similarly, we repeat it for subsets of size 2, right? So the other side of the rule is also relevant. So ABC implies D is a rule. Similarly, A implies BCD is also a rule, right? So B implies ACD is also a rule, and so on. Then we have AB implies CD, AC implies BD, and so on. So these are also the rules. So if you have a k item set, so suppose this is a 4 item set, how many rules will be there with 4 item sets? Remember that if you have a item set ABCD, then AB implies C is not a rule for this item set. Why? Because if we take the union of antecedent and consequent, you should get back the whole item set, right? So for all these rules, if you take the union of antecedent and consequent, you will get ABCD. So that is the property of the rules extracted from a particular item set. So if you have a k item set, how many rules are possible? Every time you can have a proper subset, you have a rule, right? Because the proper subset will be put one side and the remaining part will be put another side. So how many proper subsets are there for a set of size k? Again, the power set is the 2 to the power k, but you have to ignore that null set and the whole set, because the whole set is not proper set, I mean the proper subset, because from the whole set you cannot get any rule, right? So if you have ABCD implies null, it is not a rule. So that is also discarded. So remaining, so 2 to the power k minus 2, this will be the number of rules. So you have to extract this many rules, and then you then find out the confidence values of this rule. But the finding confidence is not as time consuming as finding support. Can you tell why? Because for finding the support value, you see that you have to access the actual data set. To find the count of an item set, you have to access the actual data set. And many times the data set is so large that you cannot fit it in the computer memory. I mean that in the RAM. Major part of the data set will reside in the hard disk. So you have to access the hard disk to compute the support value. So this will be time consuming. But while computing the confidence values of the rules, you see that you have already computed the support values and you can keep it somewhere in the memory, in some data structure. And you can actually use those support values to compute the confidence values of the rules. You don't have to access the actual data set. So that computation can be done on memory. You don't have to access the hard disk. So that's why computing confidence values are easier, or actually at least less time consuming than computing the support values, right? But still that also can be improved, that actually just like we have an a priori property in case of item sets, we also have an a priori property for rule generation. So maybe I should not go into details because it might be too much of theory. Should we go through or we go to the application? So this is just the theory is very simple actually. So suppose you have 3 rules, okay, generated from the same item set. Instead of going into theory, let us give the example, so that will be better, I think. So ABCD is an item set. So all these 3 rules are generated from this item set, okay, because if you take the union of antecedent and consequent, you will get the whole item set. So we have 3 rules: ABC implies D, AB implies CD, and A implies BCD. The question is there any relationship among their confidence values? You have to tell it without computing the confidence. Just to tell that you know that support of ABC will be equal or smaller than support of AB. That is obvious, anti-monotone property. Support of ABC is less than equal to support of AB, agree? Support of bread, milk, butter is less than equal to support of bread, milk. Is less than equal to support of bread, right? So just like that I can tell without computing their support. Similarly, I have to tell whether there is any relationship between their confidence values, but you cannot compute the confidence. Without computing the confidence, you have to tell the relationship. How this relationship is coming? I am saying that confidence of ABC implies D will be greater than equal to confidence of ABCD, greater than equal to confidence of A implies BCD. You see that what is in the confidence formula? What is in the numerator? For all these rules, numerator will be support of ABCD. Numerator is same for all these rules. Where they differ? In the denominator. Here the denominator is support of ABC. Here the denominator is support of AB. Which one is greater or equal? Support of ABC is greater or support of AB is greater? Support of AB is likely to be greater. So obviously confidence of this will be, so as this is greater, denominator is greater, so the whole ratio will be larger here. Numerator is same, denominator is smaller here than this one, so the whole ratio, that is the confidence, will be larger here. So ABC implies D, confidence will be larger than confidence of AB implies CD, which will be larger than confidence of A implies BCD. So this is the confidence rule. And we can use this kind of relationship for all the rules which are extracted from the same item sets, like this one. So this is the rule lattice, okay? So first rule, this is actually not used. ABCD implies null. Then BCD implies A, ACD implies B, ABD implies C, ABC implies D. So these are the first level of rules. then we get CD implies AB and so on. So you see that what will happen if we somehow find that we start from this and we find the confidence values of these rules. And we find that the confidence value of this rule is less than the minimum confidence. So what will happen? We actually don't need to compute the confidence values of all these rules, because these rules will have lower confidence than this one. If this rule is not satisfying the minimum confidence, so obviously this rule will also not satisfy the minimum confidence. Right? So this way we can use the rule lattice again to discard many of the association rules even without computing their confidence values. Okay? So this way we proceed to generate all the rules with the efficient approach, and finally we get the set of association rules which satisfy the minimum support. Why this rule will automatically satisfy the minimum support? Because this rule is extracted from only the frequent item sets. So the support of the rule means the support of that item set, which is, we have already found that is to be frequent. So that will automatically satisfy the minimum support. Right? So now some more, little bit more terminology. Now you see that even if we are discarding so many rules, still we have too many rules. Still we have too many rules from the whole data set. So there are some approaches which are condensed representation of the rules. Condensed representation means just like we have some set of files we zip together into a small file. Similarly here, if we have a large number of rules, we can zip that set into a small set of rules, which will be called the condensed representation of the rules. And whenever we need, we can extract all the rules from that condensed representation, just like unzipping. So zipping and unzipping. So there are two approaches for condensed representation. One is called the maximal frequent item sets, which is defined as a frequent item sets for which none of the immediate supersets are frequent. That means we already have defined what is a frequent item set. That is the item set which is having support greater than equal to minimum support. Now what is maximal frequent? Maximal frequent, an item set will be called maximally frequent if there is no superset of that item set which is frequent. Right? Bread, milk, butter is called maximal frequent if it is itself is frequent, but none of its superset is frequent. Then it is called maximally frequent. Okay? So it can be proved that if we have only the set of maximally frequent item sets, from that we can extract all the frequent item sets, just taking all the subsets of maximally frequent item sets. Another one is the closed frequent item sets. Now first you have to understand what is a closed item set. You see that an item set is called a closed item set if none of its superset has the same support of that item set. Suppose I just give you an example. Suppose bread butter, it is an item set, bread butter. Its support is suppose 5. Now what will be the support of bread butter milk? If bread butter has support 5, what may be the possible values of support of bread butter milk? It can be equal also, but it cannot be more, definitely. So a superset will have a support equal or less. So an item set, this bread butter will be called closed if none of its superset has equal support of this one. That means all its supersets have smaller support value than this. So then that item set will be called a closed item set. And if an item set is closed as well as frequent, then it is called closed frequent item set. Okay? So these closed frequent item sets are also, so this is the relationship actually. So if this is the all frequent item sets, a subset of them are closed frequent and the subset of them are maximally frequent. So this is the most condensed representation. If you want to extract all the frequent item sets, you can extract from here as well or here as well. But there is a basic difference between these two is that for maximally frequent item set, you can extract all the frequent item sets, but you cannot get the frequency of all the frequent item sets. You have to recompute it again visiting the data set. But if you are keeping the closed item sets only, closed frequent item sets, then you can extract all the frequent item set as well as you don't need to again compute the support values. These are already computed. Okay? So we sometimes prefer the closed frequent item sets than the maximally frequent item sets. Although maximal frequent item sets are most condensed representation, maximum zipping, but it is a lossy zipping, we can say, that some information we lose. But for closed frequent item sets, we don't lose any information. We are zipping, we are condensed representation and also non-loss condensed representation. So now here I will give you an alternative approach of mining the closed frequent item sets. If you are trying to directly mine the closed frequent item sets instead of going through the a priori process, there is an alternative approach that we proposed actually. So this technique is called like this. So suppose this is your original data sets. So this is a transaction data set. This is a transaction data set. Now, a transaction data set can be posed as a binary data set like this. Like it is simply like we put the columns, items in the columns, and the rows are the transactions. For each transaction, you put value 1 for the items which are purchased in that transaction. And for all the remaining columns, you put 0. Okay? So this way, the transaction data set can be considered as a binary matrix like this. Now, you see that a closed item set, can we say that a closed item set is equivalent to the column set of maximal all-one bicluster? Maximal all-one bicluster means what? Here this is just a submatrix of all ones. We have to just rearrange these rows and columns to get a submatrix of all ones. Now when we'll call this submatrix as maximal? When it is not a submatrix of any other all-one matrix. Right? So I just give an example. Suppose after rearranging the rows and columns, we get that this is an all-one submatrix of this binary matrix. This is an all-one submatrix. Now, you see that this is a maximal because if you take any other row or column, you cannot get an all-one, a larger submatrix that contains this submatrix. But inside it, there are other submatrices, all-one submatrix. For example, this is an all-one submatrix. So this is not maximal. But this one is a maximal. Now, can you say that if we consider the columns of this matrix, these three item set, these three items, this item set, is it a closed item set? What was the definition of closed item set? Do you remember? The item set is closed if none of its superset has the same support of this item set, or all of its superset has lesser support than this item set. So if you take any other, as this is a maximal one, if you take any other columns, if you join any other columns with this, you will not find one in all the rows because this is maximal. Right? So if you take any other column with it, its support value will be less. What is the support value of this item set? How many transactions are there where all these three appear? These are the three transactions, so support is 3. But if you take any other column with it, actually its support will be less than 3. So if you have a maximal all-one bicluster or all-one submatrix, then the columns of that submatrix will be a closed item set. So given a matrix, dataset matrix, what we do, there is a biclustering technique called BiMax, which can be applied on that to extract all maximal all-one biclusters, all maximal all-one submatrices from this dataset, each of which will correspond to one closed item set. And from the closed item sets, we will discard all the closed item sets which are not frequent. So this is much easier way to get the all frequent closed item sets than just going through the a priori algorithm, then finding all the frequent item sets and then finding the closed item sets. Instead of doing that, we are just directly finding the all frequent closed item sets. And why we are looking for closed item sets? Because this is a non-redundant representation of all frequent item sets. And we will extract the rules only from these closed item sets. So these now can you tell me that whether bread implies milk and milk implies bread are two same rules? Same rules in the sense, will they have the same confidence and support? Bread implies milk and milk implies bread. What about the support value? Will they have the same support? Bread implies milk has the support of bread milk. Milk implies bread has the support of milk bread or bread milk. So they have the same support. Will their confidence will be also same? Confidence of bread implies milk is support of bread milk divided by support of bread. Confidence of milk implies bread is support of bread milk divided by support of milk. But the support of bread and support of milk, these might be different. So although their support of both the rules are same, but their confidence might be different. Okay? So that's why these two rules are separate rules. We have to check both of them. Right? They are being extracted from the same item set, but these are two different rules. So it does not mean that if bread implies milk satisfy the minimum confidence criteria, it may not be the vice versa. That means the milk implies bread might fail. So let us go to the application quickly again. Okay, again 15 minutes. Okay, so we have already discussed that in the last session. So this application was, this is a computational approach to predict the protein-protein interactions. Now you see that we already discussed what is a protein. A protein is a functional unit of genes which works inside the cells, and normally the individual proteins, they don't work alone. A set of proteins try to interact with each other to perform certain functionalities within the cells. Now the question is, when there is a viral infection, so for example we worked with HIV-1 and recently also we worked with COVID virus. Now suppose when a virus infection comes, so the virus particle also has their own proteins. And inside our cell, we have the human proteins. Now, when we say that there is an infection, when the viral particle somehow injects their protein into our cells, and these viral proteins starts interacting with our human proteins. So what will happen? The normal functionalities of human proteins will be disrupted because of these viral proteins start interacting with these human proteins. So normal functionalities of the human proteins will be disrupted, and we get infection because the proteins will not be able to function normally, and we get infection. So it is very important to find out which viral proteins interact with which human proteins. Because you see that when we take some antiviral drug, some medicine, the job of these medicines is actually to target these interactions, that which viral protein is interacting with human protein, and these medicines actually try to prevent these interactions by interacting either with this drug molecule will interact with the viral protein or with the human protein, so that the interaction between the viral and human protein breaks. So it is very important to understand or find out the exhaustive list of which viral proteins interact with which human proteins. Now the thing is that there are a lot of human proteins. I mean that say 50,000 human proteins, more than that. And the viral proteins, number of viral proteins is usually less. So this HIV has around only 20 viral proteins, whereas COVID-19 had around 30 viral proteins. But still, the number of possibilities you see, the 30 cross 50,000. So if you consider all possible interactions, 30 cross 50,000, right? So this is a huge possibilities. And only one way is there to definitely, but not all these viral proteins interact with all human proteins. But who will tell that which viral protein interacts with which human protein? Only a way to tell that is wet lab experiments. But can you experiment with these all possible combinations, 30 or 20 cross 50,000? Too many experimental designs will be required, too much costly and time consuming. Then the way out is that you take the help of some computational approach that will give you a most probable list of interactions. And from those interactions, so suppose this 20 cross 50,000 interactions, we apply this association rule mining techniques and we just generate 100 possible most probable interactions. These hundreds will be then tested in the wet lab to get them validated, right? So these computational approaches can be used to give you a most reduced set of most probable set of interactions. Let us see that how we actually use this association rule mining. I am just skipping all these things. Here what we do, that we first extracted, there is a database called HIV human protein interaction dataset. So obviously this will be a bipartite graph, bipartite network. Bipartite means that there will be one set of human proteins, one set of viral proteins, and the interactions. That will be the edges, those will be the edges. Now there are, when we did this work, there were around 5,000 interactions which were experimentally validated interactions, and that dataset was publicly available. That these human proteins interact with these HIV proteins, and experimentally validated around 5,000 proteins. There were 19 HIV proteins and around 1,500 human proteins, between 1,500. So between these many proteins we had total 5,000 interactions. So this bipartite graph was having these 5,000 edges basically. So this has been used, this experimentally validated data we used for the prediction purpose. That means when we will have a new pair, we try to predict whether they will interact or not. So what we did, that these interactions were of 3 types according to the directions. Like one type was from HIV to human proteins. So like there were terms like upregulates, activates, binds, cleaves, etc. There was HIV, there was some interactions from human proteins to HIV, like activated by, downregulated by. So these were the annotation terms corresponding to each interaction. And there are some non-directional, unidirectional interactions like co-localizes with, when we are not able to give any particular direction to that interaction, to the edges. Now, these are just the distribution of these different 3 types of interactions. That is that class 1 interactions, virus to human, class 2 human to virus, and finally class 3 bidirectional interactions. Now you see what we did, this graph, that means these interactions have been modeled as a matrix. What this matrix is, in the rows we have put the viral proteins. Each row corresponds to one viral protein. And each column corresponds to one human protein along with the type of the interaction. Along with the type of the interactions. And you see that in this matrix we have 4 types of values. One corresponds to the class 1 interactions, direction is from viral protein to human proteins. -1 corresponds to class 2 interactions, from human proteins to viral proteins. 0 corresponds to bidirectional interactions. And finally these crosses correspond to no interaction. No interaction means that edge does not exist, at least not experimentally validated. That means we don't have information whether these 2 proteins interact. Okay? So for example, this value 1 means this viral protein interacts with this human protein with this annotation term, and this direction is from viral protein to human protein. So this way. So now this matrix is divided into 2 parts. The negative and positive interaction, that is the class 1 and class 2 interactions. And in both the cases we combine the 0 ones. 0 means that the bidirectional interactions, because that can be considered as both class 1 and class 2 bidirectional interactions. And then we extracted the biclusters from them using the BiMax algorithm. Extracted the biclusters means we extracted the closed item sets, closed frequent item sets out of that. So closed frequent item sets, and from that we finally get the association rules out of that. So just for example, you see that like this. So suppose we have extracted the bicluster like this. So bicluster will look like, so in the rows we have the viral proteins, 3 viral proteins, and in the columns we have the human proteins along with the functions, I mean the annotations, what type of interaction it is. Now if we have a bicluster like this, so this is, so according to our discussion, previous discussion, so this set will be a closed item set. Okay, this column set will be a closed item set, and from that we can extract a rule like this. Now how this rule is actually interpreted? You see that it says that if the human proteins HP1, HP2 and HP3 interact with some HIV1 protein associated with the corresponding interaction types, then HP4 and HP5 are also likely to interact with those HIV proteins with the corresponding interaction types. So this way we interpret the extracted rules. So now these rules can be used to predict new interactions, what we did. So that can be done in this way. You see that suppose this is a rule that we have extracted. So the corresponding sub network is like this. So we have suppose this rule, the antecedent of this rule is supported by 4 viral proteins. That means these 3 human proteins interact with these 4 viral proteins with these corresponding annotations. And these are the all 5 human proteins with the type of the interactions. So you see that these light blue edges are actually, this corresponds to this bicluster. That means these interactions already exist according to the data set. And what we find suppose this left hand side, these proteins interact with this viral protein V4, but the right hand side proteins, according to our database, they are not interacting. But as this rule has a confidence of 4 out of 3, that means 75% confidence, with this probability of 75%, we can predict that this viral protein V4 will also interact with these 2 human proteins. So that is our prediction. So from the rule, we predict these interactions. So this way, from each extracted rules, we predicted a set of interactions between the viral proteins and the possible human proteins. And the confidence of the prediction or probability of the prediction will be 75%, that is equal to the confidence of the corresponding rule. So I'm just skipping these are some biological analysis, and these are some extracted rules with different confidence values from both types, both directions. And these are some example rules, okay? So these are the example rules, the human proteins along with the types, and these are the support and the confidence values of these rules. And these are the predicted interactions. Importantly, that to validate the predicted interactions, what we did, that we did a literature search and found that some interactions we predicted computationally, we found that those interactions have already been validated in some literature, experimentally validated. So that means our predictions were correct. So it was that validation was not in the data set, but in some literature it is written that these interactions are experimentally validated. So our prediction was actually validated in this way, because it is not possible to do it in wet labs for us, but this way through literature survey actually we did some validation of the predicted interactions. Okay, so let us conclude now. So it is a generic framework, as I said, that because this association rule mining problem can be applied in any data set which is posed as an like the transaction data set. That means here the rows will represent the transactions and the columns will represent the different items. So just for example, if we have suppose have a set of documents, okay, and each document has a set of keywords. So what we can do, that we can have each document in one row and each document corresponding to some keywords. These will be your items. Then you can extract some rules between the keywords, that suppose if some document possesses contains the word sports or contains the words cricket, it is also likely to contain the word sports, something like that. So any data set which can be posed as a transaction data set, you can use the association rule mining for the data set. So here are some of our papers that on association rule mining and related applications. And thank you again. So maybe the after lunch sessions are always difficult to follow, but hope at least something has gone into, so that you can it will be useful for at least some purpose, some research. And any question, please?